Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and see how this particular phone holds up in the later part of 2023. Now, what I'll definitely tell you is there is a lot to be, happy about this phone, but I will also tell you in the same breath, it's probably not worth buying this phone anymore because, it's kind of outdated with software. There are much better phones out there in the marketplace today. So just keep that in mind, but this is still an interesting phone when it comes down to it. Now, starting off with the outside, not much has changed with this phone in the exterior, as you may have imagined. Hardware does not really get refreshed, especially like 4 or 5 years after a phone has came out. With this one, came out in 2019, so it's over 4 years old now at this point. It had that 6.3-inch dynamic AMOLED display on the front, 1080p, and it was a pretty good looking display, when it first came out. It had this kind of like curved, architecture to it, which was actually kind of nice, and it still kind of looks like a pretty decent phone. Obviously it looks like a very modern phone. I will tell you, like, even when the Pixel 7 came out like last year, I just kept thinking that thing looked like the, Galaxy Note 10. It was so weird to me, and it kind of looked like it, to be honest. Now at the bottom, it had that USB Type-C port and the S Pen, which was super nice. It didn't have a headphone jack and it didn't have a micro SD card slot, which may seem commonplace now, but at that time, the Galaxy S10, all the S10s had it that came out that year. So it was a little weird, but regardless, it was still a very good looking phone. And I still think it holds up very, very well from that, specific perspective. On the backside, had that glass back, triple camera setup as well. And this is another really big advantage for this type of device. Having a phone like this that looks this good is super nice. And even though it's an older phone, it still holds up very well from the body perspective. It feels very expensive, and you can probably buy this thing for like $100 and something, probably even cheaper than that for some models. And it still feels like, I'm so surprised how cheap these phones have gotten, because they still feel like $1,000 phones, in my opinion. Now camera wise, same old 4K 60 on the front and the back. That triple camera setup was really nice to have. And I remember traveling with this phone one time in 2019, and I was actually kind of shocked how good this camera was. But there was something I didn't like about it. I don't really remember, but overall, it's a good camera when it first came out. Nowadays, compared to the most expensive cameras that we have, like on the S23 Ultras, even the S23, it's surprising how good of a job Samsung has done of improving their camera architecture year over year over year. There's still lots of advantages and lots of similarities, but I'll tell you, when it comes down to it, a phone like the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 is still a decent camera. Clearly, I wouldn't really recommend buying it anymore, but I still think it's a decent camera when it kind of comes down to it, which is very, very impressive. Now, in terms of software longevity, this is probably the biggest problem that we're getting with this type of device. With the Note 10, you're kind of on your last leg in terms of software. This thing stopped at Android 12, and we're basically almost on Android 14 right now. So this is going to kind of be causing some problems for some people, because you're not going to be getting the latest and greatest software. So why would you want to get a phone that's already outdated with software? It just doesn't really make too much sense to me. And that's why I look at a phone like the Samsung Galaxy Note 10, and I wouldn't really recommend buying it, because you're already outdated within a software perspective. So keep that in mind. Performance wise too, like this thing had the Snapdragon 855 chipset inside with 8 gigs of RAM. And I'll tell you, like, in my opinion too, like this thing was a, good performing phone as well. Like this is a good performing phone when it first came out. It still is pretty decent, but you're going to notice some like things here and there, like some lagging, some when you open an app and close an app, some glitches, but also like the lack of 120 hertz or 90 hertz. That can also mean that some people will feel like they're having a less smooth display as well. That's like another kind of small thing to keep in mind. So I think when it comes down to it, I think the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 is not really worth buying anymore. That's not to say that you should go and upgrade today if you have it, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to buy a phone like this anymore. You're probably much better off purchasing a device like a Samsung Galaxy, S22 or a Pixel 7 or a Pixel 8. Those types of phones will probably be better than this thing. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.